Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the ASCE Philadelphia Section's Transportation and Development Group meeting on the Pennsylvania Infrastructure Task Force. And we have Representative Martina White here to tell us all about that. We have worked with Representative White quite extensively on some of these issues, and a lot of these things you may look familiar to you coming right out of the ASCE report card. So that's good news for the report card. To introduce Representative White, she was elected to her second full term in 2018 after being first elected in 2015 in a special election to fill an open seat. She represents the 170th district, and that encompasses a good portion of far northeast Philadelphia. And she became the first Republican elected in Philadelphia in 25 years. She currently serves on the Appropriations, Urban Affairs, Transportation, Consumer Affairs, and Rules Committees. And just as an aside, again, any questions, please use the Q&A function. The chat functions that are available also. What we'd like to do is let the representative go through her presentation, and we can do questions and answers afterward if that works. So without any more of me, let's hand it over to Representative White. Thank you.
There you go. Okay, great. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me today. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak about this very important topic of transportation infrastructure. And yes, your organization has been integral in terms of the infrastructure task force report that we had put together. Every piece of it pretty much, whether it be from railroads to bridges to our interstate system, has had your mark on it in terms of the ratings that you provide in your report to us in the General Assembly. And we really appreciate the work that you do. I know it is challenging and has become even more challenging, I would imagine, given the current circumstances surrounding COVID-19. But you know, Pennsylvania overall is a very vibrant state, and we have a lot to offer this country. We have a lot of innovative people who definitely need to have safe and reliable transportation system in order to live and work here. And that's kind of why you know, we took this initiative on. The leadership team here in Harrisburg, which has shifted a little bit since this report had been produced. Right now we have Brian Cutler is our speaker. He was previously the leader who had assigned us this task with trying to identify ways that we can rectify the lack of funding for infrastructure investment in Pennsylvania. And the core group of people that were dedicated to this task were members from both the Appropriations Committee, as well as the Transportation Committee. And they were from all different regions of the Commonwealth. So everywhere from rural Pennsylvania to our urban communities, which was really nice because we do need to make sure that with everything that we do, we are a very diverse state and need to accommodate all of those different regions. So I imagine most of you are very familiar with the efforts that had been taken previously, and I'll try to give you a brief overview of that in terms of, you know, Act 44, Act 89, what had taken place that has led us to where we are today. And then I can just talk to you about some of the product that came about from all of the different stakeholders involved in the task force report. So basically, you know, Act 44 had required the Pennsylvania Turnpike to provide PennDOT with $450 million annually, and that was $200 million for roads, highways, and bridges, and then $250 million for public transit. But there was one hiccup. The funds hinged in part on the tolling of Route 80, which was rejected by the federal government. So, you know, the General Assembly didn't change anything in terms of how much the Turnpike had to continue to pay. And so they wound up having to find a way to pay the $450 million. And they did so by raising toll rates 11 straight years thus far, and also, unfortunately, driving their agency into debt levels to more than 13 billion. And I know that's been going up significantly since these numbers had come out previously. In addition, the Turnpike Commission wound up reducing their rebuild program by 13%, and they're not able to even consider any expansion projects, including adding new interchanges. But starting in 2022, the commission's payments are, they plan to drop to $50 million per year until 2057, which creates a large funding gap in the general fund. And as if we're not already facing enough concerns around our budget here in Harrisburg to the tune of a $5.5 billion budget deficit due to the COVID-19 crisis and the economic impact of it here, and with regard to the governor's decisions. And it's just been very challenging. And I think that in transportation related industries, they're faced with a tremendous amount of strain because of all of the underfunding that's been going on for a decade now. Act 89 did eliminate the flat 12-cent gas tax and uncap the wholesale oil company franchise tax. But once again, those revenues in and of themselves actually fell short because there are now more fuel efficient vehicles on our roadways, like hybrids and electric models, that have now reduced the demand for gas. So that has been cutting into the revenues that are generated from it. Along with that, the cost of actual projects has been going up. So the inflationary cost of actually doing any given project is going up while our revenues are going down. So it's really been very challenging in that regard. And then we also have, this past April, like last year, PennDOT had revealed that an estimated $4.5 billion was diverted from the state's motor license fund to the Pennsylvania State Police since fiscal year 2012. So currently, an estimated $1.25 billion or 65% of the state police budget is paid for with nearly 1/3 of the entire motor license fund. This is certainly a major issue that was identified, and I think we're all very well aware of. But moving forward, our task force, we primarily recommended 3 key guidelines to pulling the Commonwealth away from this, financial, I would say a nightmare, but quagmire is the word that's more polite probably. First, obviously, and first and foremost, I think we just need to end the diversions. For example, as a result of the diversions to the state police, only 27% of PennDOT's projects in 2017 were actually completed. By ending the diversions permanently, transportation priorities will be able to be completed and new projects can begin. The second recommendation we made was to just improve competition within the industry. So we have to allow the private sector to manage and handle more of the projects for PennDOT and local government entities. PennDOT is already doing a lot of this with the rapid bridge replacement project, and they were focused on the bridges of similar size and design so that they could be completed almost en masse, and that resulted in time and cost savings for the Commonwealth and taxpayers. Costs have been lowered, and it did reduce PennDOT's workload. So now it can focus on other projects, and that's really what we want to do. We want to maximize the number of projects that can get done in any given year. Consolidating the permitting process for a series of large projects would definitely improve efficiency, and I feel like you guys have probably heard this kind of conversations for probably years now, but unfortunately, the General Assembly has not taken action on these items. I can tell you that as someone who, has a business background, who also has, family in the transportation industry, I understand the importance of advocating for these different, needs across the state. And speaking with our other members, they're starting to really get a sense as to why this is so important. I could probably go on and on, but just the third piece here was really just to localize. So Act 89 had authorized the local counties to impose a $5 additional vehicle registration fee to fund local transportation projects. But many counties have, they implemented the fee, but they're also still seeking additional options to raise funds locally. So we had a variety of pieces of legislation attached to the report, and many of these pieces are designed to address some of these concerns and also to implement the results from the report, like the solutions that were brought about and recommendations. But I know that a lot of people, especially right now, given the financial condition of the Commonwealth, are concerned about raising any kind of taxes. And I definitely understand that. I, don't personally have any interest in doing so, but ultimately we need to make sure that when bills are being passed, that there's this constant mindfulness about where revenues are going to be generated to provide for the infrastructure needs of our state. For instance, now I serve on a few different committees, one of which is appropriations, consumer affairs, urban affairs, and transportation and rules. Consumer affairs has a bill going through it regarding trying to expand the infrastructure for electric vehicles, which is fantastic, and I'm certainly in favor of doing so. What the advocates for that bill had expressed to me was that natural gas is going to be the field or the industry that's going to be supplying the electricity at these sites, which is fine. And also certainly helps a lot of our rural members who advocate for natural gas expansion or those types of entities to be put into place. The concern, though, was that the bill did not have any revenue generation for the state to help pay for infrastructure. So just like we have a gas tax and people pay at the pump, there was no outlet for that in regards to the electric consumption of when vehicles go to the charging stations to seek out their, to fuel their batteries in their cars. And so, I think it's important for us to be mindful of those things, to make sure that we are constantly advocating for what needs to happen, because you can't just expect the General Assembly to pass legislation that maybe, you can get enough rural members to support it. You could probably get a lot of, Southeast members to support it because it's expanding electric vehicle charging stations, and that's good. But, we cannot leave those important pieces out just because, it doesn't belong in this bill. And it's like, we have to be very mindful. So that's just one of the things I wanted to bring up, as we, move forward this year. But, it really is ultimately the legislature's responsibility to strengthen our transportation foundation and to move Pennsylvania forward. But, rural and urban, as you just heard, do sometimes have competing interests. But ultimately we do rely on one another to be competitive nationally and internationally. We are one Pennsylvania, and I fully, will continue to be an advocate for making sure that we have what we need for future generations of Pennsylvanians. I hope that this didn't go too long in terms of a presentation, but I hopefully it gave you a broad overview of what we're dealing with, and I'm happy to take any questions that folks may have on the call.
Okay, I'm not seeing any right off the bat, but I'll ask my own to maybe get things started here.
Sure.
We know there's some virus around that apparently is throwing everybody's lives in some kind of confusion. And we know it's going to affect transportation funding. Do you see ways around that in the transportation task force? I mean, I know we can't magically print money, although some people are trying to print coins, apparently, from what I've been reading, and they're very valuable. But I know Act 89 gave us a lot of good feeling. It got a lot of projects off the ground, and it would be a shame to lose that momentum, but it's not in our control. So we're just concerned. I mean, we've talked to some legislators this year so far, and that's a big concern. So I don't know if, again, we're not trying to put you on a spot, but if there's any.
No, that's fine. I fully 100% understand where you're coming from. Look, you guys are in business to, you're in business and you need to be able to make decisions for the future of your companies and your employees, whether you need to, lay off people, hopefully not. Or if you need to expand your efforts here in our state. And, the best way to express to you guys, our commitment to this is both myself, our task force members, and the chairman of the transportation committee have been in conversations with Leader Benninghoff now. And, our appropriations committee and Stan Saylor to expand our economy, because there's, when we are having financial challenges, which is what we're faced with right now with the $5.5 billion budget deficit, the way to fix it, in my opinion, is not just to address the expenditures that need to be paid for, but also to expand the pie, and this is probably a classic Republican conversation, but in order for everyone to benefit, we have to invest in infrastructure. I've explained to them that when we make this investment, it's a 3-to-1 return on the investment. When you're able to not only create jobs, generate revenue via people spending their money that they're now getting because they have a job, the income tax, the sales tax that is generated from this, and then also you get the actual physical infrastructure. Okay, so there are so many reasons why, but those are the 3 that I have expressed to them specifically as to why we need to allocate a portion of the monies that we do get in, whether it be from borrowing or revenue generation in the fall that could come up or be proposed by different members to fix the budget deficit. Those are very, very tough decisions that we have to make. But ultimately, when we do get the money, okay, you have to be smart about how you spend it. You can't just put it toward expenses. You have to put it toward investing in the future of Pennsylvania. And I believe that the #1 investment that we can possibly make is in transportation infrastructure. And I know, that has a whole realm within itself in terms of, well, are you talking streets and roads and bridges? Are you talking rail lines? Are you talking, the water infrastructure, which definitely needs to be addressed? I know that's been a major concern for engineers across the state, and, environmentalists as well, because you have leakage basically going right into the Susquehanna. And these are the types of things that just shouldn't be happening when, when we, again, have to, just make those tough calls and say, look, we're not going to be able to dedicate as much money towards, whatever the initiatives that everybody typically wants to do. We have to do the things that are going to result in growing jobs and growing revenues. Growing the pie is usually what I try to reference in that regard. But I hope that helps answer the question a little bit. But that's basically been the conversation. Where are we going to get the money from in order to pay the $5.5 billion deficit, and also, in my opinion, get additional dollars to reinvest in Pennsylvania's future. Right now, we have the lowest interest rates probably in the history of ever. So why not capitalize on that opportunity and maximize it right now for the benefit of future Pennsylvanians? I personally, I would try to get as much as we possibly can from the open market, from the government. Like the federal government is offering, certain types of loans, but that there are ways to mitigate this issue, and I know that there are proposals that are floating around regarding how to address it. But I would just say we are advocating strongly, and I know that the focus is going to be in November to grow the economy, because you have to like jumpstart the economy again for Pennsylvania. So that's kind of where my mindset is, and I think that's a number of members that are within the maybe appropriations and transportation committee are right now. But I would just say continue to advocate, continue to call your local members that are in your district, get them to understand why you need them to make infrastructure a priority this year and moving forward.
Okay. And that's prompted a couple other questions. One is, hearing the interest to end the diversion of the motor license fund to the state police and ending the diversion of the turnpike to PennDOT, do you have interest in other techniques to add additional funding for transportation?
Sure. So there were, the question is, we have plenty of ideas to generate revenues for transportation infrastructure, right? And there's a whole host of them, which I can, if you go on to my website, repwhite.com, you can actually see the House Transportation Infrastructure Task Force, the recommendations, and also some of the stakeholder recommendations. In that stakeholder recommendations list, you will see a variety of items from the vehicle miles traveled charge, to land value capture, to everything from the severance tax to the list is plentiful. It's definitely not going to necessarily meet the $15 billion infrastructure need that we have, but it will certainly, if we were to implement any of these items, which is the challenge. I mean, look, we have a Republican majority who has zero interest in raising taxes, and that's kind of why I geared the conversation toward the potential for having to borrow money, which luckily, again, interest rates are low. But in terms of these different proposals, I think that the ones that are potentials that have definitely garnered the attention of some of the members on the Transportation Committee are the land value capture item, which basically it allows the government to access some of the revenues that are generated next to the rail lines. So whether it be, mass transit or for the, transporting of goods. Those, those are probably that one I think was the most feasible one out of the group that had been, out of this list. And I would, basically when there's a rail line that's put in, whether it be directly into a business like a distribution center or something, and there's a rail line put in, that distribution center, they benefit from that on their land value. And then also for people who live near a train station or a train line, those people benefit from having the ability, the value of their property goes up by having access to being so close to those locations. And so, because it's a public investment that was made into putting those rail lines there, shouldn't the taxpayer also receive some of the benefit back? And that's where, that land value capture comes into play. And then the other one that I think was something that has been definitely on the forefront has been the vehicle miles traveled charge. And that is a little bit more complicated though, because from our understanding, the technology is not quite there yet to impose it. And so, we're kind of, it's like the chicken or the egg thing. And you have to figure out how you can actually implement it and then have people actually pay. Because, it's one thing to measure the miles that they traveled. It's another thing to actually, get the revenues in from it, just like we've seen with the electric vehicles. Technically, it's an alternative, it's an alternative fuels tax that they should be paying, but nobody basically does. I think they generated like $1 off of it in past years. So, that's the challenge, is like the public doesn't even know that that this is something that they're supposed to be doing. And that's why there is a proposal to, and this is the Democrat chairman of the Transportation Committee, Representative Carroll, had put forward a, I think it's $150 fee for an electric vehicle. So just like you pay your registration fee, there would be $150 extra fee just for people who use, an electric vehicle. And, that's a very, simple bill. You know, it's really about fair use. You know, if you're using the highways and bridges and things, but you're not necessarily paying for it, that's not really fair to all those who are. And that's why he had proposed that bill. And I believe, you know, one of the members of the committee, though, was concerned that that fee was not large enough, that the fee should be $250. And so now there's a, you know, there's just this back and forth going on right now, and we're just trying to get it done. But, you know, that's part of it. Then the, you know, that other piece that I had mentioned earlier about how there's a bill to create more electric vehicle charging stations, but no means to generate the revenues from it. 80% of the electric vehicle charging takes place at a residential home. The other 20% is at a, you know, a public type charging station. So how do you capture that usage and, you know, make sure that people who are using electric vehicles, and they're becoming more and more free, you know, the industry, the car industry is headed in that direction. We all already know this. It's inevitable that a majority of the vehicles on our roadways are going to be more fuel efficient. They're going to be electric, potentially all electric. And so we have to be mindful and really start steering our legislation toward that inevitable reality. And we have, you know, I have spoken with both the chairman and even leader Benninghoff about the fact that even if we just were to make the option for these types of charges or fees available to PennDOT to implement at a future date and time, or, you know, like a future, you know, maybe it doesn't go into place and into effect now, but maybe they do a study and then they can implement it. But it would at least give them more flexibility and allow for, you know, it becomes more and more politically challenging for future legislative bodies to impose any kinds of fees and charges and taxes because people don't want them, right? And obviously I don't even want them either. But again, you have to be fair. Everyone has to be paying for the roads and bridges and highways. Like if you're using them, you need to pay for them. It's only fair. But again, as more and more electric vehicles get onto the roadways and more of our constituents are driving them, the more and more difficult it will be for each member to vote in favor of imposing a fee on those types of vehicles. So, you know, it's really, time is of the essence. And I think that, you know, we have to continue to make it a priority. I know Representative Carroll's bill is you know, it's a good bill and it should really have just flown through in my personal opinion. But unfortunately, you know, there's, you know, challenges with the amount of money that the fee is. And, you know, Representative Carroll has to be able to take that back to his caucus and say, you know, $150 is feasible, but $250 is too much, and the members won't vote for that on their side. And then you have the Republicans on our side saying, well, we want the $250. So, you know, in my opinion, I mean, something's better than nothing at this point. So at least do the, you know, at least do something. But, you know, that's, I guess, the answer to that question in terms of, you know, additional options and revenue streams potentially.
Okay, we have a couple more questions.
Okay.
Joe has posted your stakeholder recommendations link on the chat, so anybody can follow that. I think we have, let's see, 3 more. So these, we'll just keep it at that if there's no further, yeah, if we can submit no further questions.
Okay, I'll try to keep my responses a little shorter too.
The information's good, so.
Okay, good.
This question is, what can we, the public, do to help push this forward to pass more legislation for transportation infrastructure?
So you know, it would be great for, you know, the public to always, you know, reach out to their state representatives. If you're a business owner that, or even just someone who is a user of infrastructure, You should know that it's only fair that the people who are using that infrastructure are paying for it, and to have the public contacting the state reps to say, hey, you know, make sure that that, you know, electric vehicle is paying what I have to pay when I go to the gas pump, you know, like that's only fair. You know, that would be really helpful to hear that messaging coming from the public, because I think it'll help members realize that, you know, they have to do something about it to even the playing field and make things more fair in the marketplace. I would also just say that in terms of our industry, your industry, and my role as a government official to explain back to the public as well that, you know, why infrastructure investment is really important, and why, you know, Act 89 was a great 10-year you know, investment, but it didn't meet the full expectations that people had intended when they passed that bill. And, you know, so not all of the projects and things that should have been done that were expected to be completed from that proposal were actually able to be achieved. And that's why we need to make further changes and investments in order to not only compensate for what was not achieved in the past, but also to plan for the future. So those are, I would say, are the few things that if we could hear those things coming from the public, that would be very helpful. And it makes it so much easier for members to be willing to vote for things like that. And look, the economy and job creation, I think, is always a, you know, a sticking point, especially now with the many people from the public arena who are on the unemployment compensation line. And, you know, those are people who can reach out to the state and say, hey, look, I don't want to be unemployed for any extended period of time. Like, I want a job. And I think if you guys at least made the investment in infrastructure, I could probably go get a job, because there's so many ancillary, you know, fields that can, you know, can grow and employ people once that investment's made. So hopefully that helps answer that question, and I'll try to get the other couple ones in too.
Yeah, I'm going to combine two into one here. One starts out with e-commerce growing and trucks on the road, some of which originate and return from out of state. Is there a way we can make those road users pay their fair share on the impacts on our roadways? And sort of an ancillary to that, where other states are looking at expanding tolling. So is that something that ties into that?
So yeah, I would just encourage people to contact the state Senate to advocate for our P3 bill. It's public-private partnerships, and it also entails tolling. So that would allow for you know, more outlets for that type of initiative to be achieved. So when people are coming in from out of state, and there, you know, many other states, they actually toll I-95. You know, so why is Pennsylvania not doing that? At least from the out of state people coming in, and you know, maybe not so much on the local level, but, you know, like, what about the you know, those high occupancy user lanes? Is that something that could be discussed? You know, there's a lot of different options. I know many of these options are already available to the turnpike, but PennDOT needs to be able to have the umbrella to broker things out as it pertains to tolling. And right now they don't have the ability to do some of that. So that's why the P3 bill would be really helpful to get that completed. And that's currently sitting in the Senate. I believe it's the Transportation Committee. And I can actually get you the bill number real quick for you guys, so that you can, you know, give the senators a call. And I'd have to look it up though, guys. I can't think of it off the top of my head for some reason.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a great bill, and it would definitely help in that regard. So it's a good question.
Okay. One last question we have is for the electric charging stations. Is there an active pump fee for that electricity?
Well, that's the thing. Right now in Pennsylvania, there isn't anything like that. And also the infrastructure itself is not built out yet. but that's what in consumer affairs, there is a bill, and I also have to get you that bill number, but it proposes that, that the utilities are able to charge additional money to consumers in order to help pay for the infrastructure and maintain it. But that goes across all consumers, right? It's not just, and it's also not something that is a revenue generator to the state. It's just pertaining to the infrastructure itself. That is the charging location, like the station. And right, that inside that bill, there was no fee or or tax of any kind as it pertained to charging your vehicle at that charging station. And that's what concerned me the most about it, is like, okay, great, we're implementing the infrastructure, which is great, but you cannot leave off the part where there's more to just the charging station. There's also the roads and the bridges and the interstates that these highly efficient, vehicles are able to drive on. They have to pay their fair share as well. And so that's why I had, expressed that to the advocates for that particular bill, and said, I don't know how far you're probably going to get with that, because I'm definitely going to be, I'm happy to support it, but just know that I'm not going to let up until we make sure that the state and taxpayers are, not bearing the full burden of people who are using our roadways and our infrastructure for free. It's just not fair. So that's where that's at.
Okay. We did find out that Kathy Farrell just posted HB 2065 is the public-private transportation program.
Yes, thank you. I was literally gonna just say that, but yes, it is that bill number. Thank you very much.
All right, and we can wrap it up here. Your constituent Ruben asked the question, how can ASCE help? And I think the answer is we're here to help. I mean, you can follow up, but I mean, we'll do what we can. Obviously, we have an interest in this, but we're also users and taxpayers and constituents. So I think,
Yes.
we're very interested, and it sounds a little self-serving sometimes, but I think
it's definitely not self-serving. You guys are great, and I really appreciate all the work that you do. The number one thing you can do is call the members and tell them how important it is to invest in infrastructure and the return that we can get for the Commonwealth when we put money toward it. Because I think that in the fall, again, that is going to be the priority, is to grow the economy and help get people back to work. But they need jobs in order to get that.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you all very much.
Yeah. Okay. We appreciate your time. Appreciate everybody attending. And like I said, we're here to help. If you need us, please reach out, let us know how we can help, and we'll take it from there. So, Representative, thank you again. And we'll be in touch, I'm sure. We'll be talking.
Okay. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Yeah.